Some interesting numbers in a poll released today on Maine's top political races this year.
Brian Sullivan breaks it down for us.
With Maine's primary elections just over 3 months away, a newly released poll is providing some insight in the state's most closely watched races. The Pine Tree State poll, conducted by the University of New Hampshire, paints a picture of several contests still taking shape as candidates vie for their party's nominations. In the race for the Democratic U.S. Senate nomination, Graham Plattner holding a commanding lead. According to the poll, 64% of voters would select Plattner if the primary were held today, while Governor Janet Mills trails with 26% support. Other candidates combine to account for just 4% of the vote, with 6% of voters remaining undecided. The poll projects the general election for U.S. Senate 2. It has Plattner winning a race against Susan Collins with 49% of the vote compared to Collins' 38%. Should Mills gain the nomination, it has her winning that race as well, but by a narrower margin. It shows Mills with 41%, Collins with 40%. The Democratic gubernatorial primary shows a more fragmented field. Nirav Shah emerges as the frontrunner with 25% of voter support, followed by Shenna Bellows at 19%, Troy Jackson at 16%, Hannah Pingree capturing 10%, while Angus King III holds 5% support. A substantial 23% of voters remain undecided, suggesting this race could still shift as candidates increase their visibility heading into that primary. The Republican side also shows a significant number of undecided voters. Bobby Charles leads the field with 28%, Garrett Mason a distant second with 12% support. All other candidates are in single digits, and 31% of Republican voters remain undecided. You see that there. Let's take a look at Maine's second congressional district now. The poll shows Paul LePage in a tight contest against Joe Baldacci. Those numbers right there. And Matthew Dunlap. Let's take a look at those numbers as well. 1-point leads in both instances. And then if it was a race between LePage and Jordan Wood, you see the numbers there. 48% LePage, 44% for Jordan Wood as the nominee. The poll was conducted between February 12th and the 16th and has a margin of error of 2.9%. If you want to see that poll in its entirety, you can head to our website. Now back over to the desk.